Hey, this is This Week at Music Admin. Today is June 6th. It's Friday, and this is just a little background of what we got up to this week at Music Admin. So, big thing we've been doing is sort of codifying our HR and onboarding. So we've needed to hire a couple people in light of a really big project that we're working on. And so it's a whole thing to get everybody onboarded. Their profiles, their payroll, their contract with us, making sure everything is above board and that we're compliant and everything is crystal clear, super important. But not only that, the compliance, but setting them up for success. So what does training look like? What access do they need? It's like drinking from a fire hose for a lot of folks when they're new. Our client base, our offering, copyright law, all these, who we're interacting with, how we're interacting with them, all of this stuff can be confusing for somebody that's somewhat of a newbie. And so defining that and getting that into a process just makes everybody's life easier. We're able to bring them up to speed and get them productive and feeling like they're making a contribution much quicker. And so codifying all of that this past week has been important, and we're looking forward to more of that. The finance team, really, we had a little mini project, and it's basically to amortize and to project some of the bigger purchases that we make. So for some of our staff, their health insurance are biannual payments, and so just to amortize that over the course of the months. We do a big holiday party, and we all try to come together as a retreat. And that's sort of a large ticket item that's 1 week of the year. We're going to amortize that out so that we know how much that costs us each and every week. Our 13th month bonus at the holidays, all of these things, and just trying to get an understanding and a really close look at our cash flow, our profit, our expenses, all of these things, so that we have a just crystal clear exactly what our runway is, and sort of the overarching thing that I've talked about before, that I think that most folks want in business and in life, and what I certainly want here at Music Admin, is everything going to be okay? And the more clarity that I can have into our finances and sort of every aspect of our business, the numbers don't lie. And if I can, as long as I have the numbers and I understand specifically what those issues might be and where there's opportunity, where things need to change, there's plenty of opportunity to change course and make adjustments to accommodate. But without it, you just don't know. You're flying in the dark. So amortizing some of that stuff out has been really helpful. Did a big evaluation this past. We started a big evaluation. It usually takes us about a week or two to do evaluation or analysis. What is that? 3 things: data, finance, and legal. The data is taking a look at how a catalog is being represented around the world. ASCAP, BMI, YouTube, HFA, MRI, MLC, SACEM in France, PRS in the UK, JASRAC in Japan, and so on and so on and on. PROs, CMOs, network, sound exchange. We're looking at all these places where a copyright might be, mostly on the publishing side, but we do quite a bit, probably 20% on the master side. And we're looking out onto the landscape, into the music ecosystem, to understand how is this music, how are these copyrights currently represented? Who's got a claim on? Where are they in conflict? Where are there multiple assets that are on over at a particular network or at a performing rights organization? Because all these things matter, right? If those codes aren't exactly right, and the shares and the percentages and all these things, if they're not exactly right, the splits, then the accurate money, the right amount of money doesn't go to the right party, and that's a problem. So sometimes folks come to us, whether it's to work with us specifically, or if they're somewhere else at another label or another publisher, and they just want a third party to go in and say, how is this stuff being represented around the world? that we're happy to do that work. And so it's, again, three things. The first is the data, looking at all of that, producing a report to say, where is it in conflict? How is it being claimed? So on and so forth, all of the data, the associated metadata. The second part is the legal. So we take delivery of all of the contracts for our client, and then we put it into a chart. It's called a Gantt chart that basically says, okay, for that album, for the two albums from 1970 to 1985, we have a contract for these two albums through this date. And then from 85 to 93 are covered under this contract. But from 93 to 97, we don't have a contract, but from 97 to present, you're all good. And those gaps give sort of they can provide some direction as to what do I go work on? If I need to go hire an attorney to do something or help me out or clarify something retroactive or otherwise, where do I start? What is needed? If I need to get a loan or an advance, or I want to redo a deal, or I want to sell my catalog, or I want to buy something, having this clear chain of title in that what we call a legal map, identifying exactly where is what and what titles, what albums, what periods of time have legal documentation that is clear and defined and able to be stood on is really, really important. So first thing's data. Second thing is that legal map. We organize everything. We show the gaps. And then the third thing is the finance. So we'll take the historical finances, we'll compile them, we'll digitize, if we're working with PDFs or something, royalty reports, ASCAP reports, BMI, this sort of thing, we'll digitize those into Excel such that we can then model them. And then we model in the projection as far as, looking at historical growth. That's the first sort of signal as to what future growth might be. If that is limited, excuse me, we're going to take into account industry growth and what is that projected to be from a variety of sources. We're going to take into account the genre and the vintage and the scale, all these things, whether or not somebody has a tour planned or some other sort of tentpole event coinciding in the not so distant future. We discount heavily the sync because those tend to be one-offs, and this is more of a projection out into the future. And then we use what's called a discount rate, which is sort of a, if you know what the Fed rate is, the federal interest rate plus what's called a risk premium. So if the Fed rate, let's just say, is 5%, well, if you can buy a treasury bill and get 5% on it, that's almost like guaranteed money. Well, a music catalog might be riskier than that, and so there's going to be a risk premium, and that risk premium right now is about 4.5 points. So 9.5 points, 8.5 to 10.5, somewhere in there, depending, is going to give you a discount rate. And so the idea is that $1 tomorrow is worth less than $1 today, because $1 today I would be able to invest and get a return. So we use that discount rate to discount back what those future revenues might be to give us a net present value, or what is that catalog worth today. And so we were excited to be engaged to do evaluation and analysis. This week we got started on that, and so that's kind of cool. The Music Admin Catalog V1, it's so basic. We had prior iterations of this in the past that were very complex and had all kinds of different, variables and fields that we could alter and all this stuff. And we learned from that. And so as we reintroduce this and sort of refactor this piece of software, which is really a daily work tool for our staff, we're starting off with just the most basics. MVP, minimum viable product. What is the absolute minimum that we can use in our day-to-day work to make our jobs easier and our clients' lives better? So that's kind of cool. I might, if I can figure out how to do a screen share, I might click around a little bit. But we'll see that soon enough. We did start a couple new, or one really large research project for a new client that's a relatively large client. Lots of copyrights, very popular, tens, hundreds of millions of views, on a large portion of these titles. And so that was the need to hire a couple more people to come in and help with that research. And I was always thinking about it, like the YouTube CMS, incredibly powerful software. There's the ability to make a claim on someone's work, and that with that claim, money will be redirected. And rightfully so, it is, folks are kind of sensitive about how that works and the power that exists in that tool. We're super fortunate in that we've got access to those tools, but you just can't give a newbie or somebody that doesn't know how some of this stuff works. You just can't dump them into that ecosystem for fear that they would make mistakes that are unacceptable. And so one of the things that we've done is that research, turns out, is a really great place to get started. And so that was why we hired the new folks. We usually they come in at research, they're giving a hand to really go out and find those titles and the metadata that define a catalog, to help with the organization of the legal and to help model some of that finance in a way that is not isn't necessarily going to touch someone else's work on the day. Of course, once we ingest something, that will make claims on other assets in the ecosystem. But by that point, it's been reviewed multiple times, quality assurance processes that we've got in place to make sure that nothing is erroneous. So excited to be working on a big project. We did 4 audits. These are for new clients. We usually do 2 or 3, 4 of these a week. And this is, someone will call and say, hey, I'm considering working with you guys. How do you work? What's going on? What are you doing? And I always say that the very best way to get started is to just do a quick audit. We call it a bench audit, where we can usually turn it around in a few days, and we go in. It's sort of like an abbreviated version of that analysis that I was talking about before. And we usually do 1 or 2 songs, a couple hits, to identify, where is this thing currently? How is it being represented? Is it wonky way over here? Are there multiple assets? Was there a deal with Jilly Bo's publishing back in the day that someone forgot about? And oh yeah, I forgot about them. Yeah, they should have that claim. It's like, okay, there might not be a room for us, but we can surface some of that stuff before we get started. So we did 4 of those this week, and we had 12 new deliveries, which was several hundred songs. So that was super exciting. That's all for this week. It's been a busy one. Next week, we're in New York. It's Indie Week. It's the NMPA annual meeting, the Music Investors Conference, and the AIMP Summit. A2IM's got some events. We'll be at YouTube and at Spotify and Meta. There's a whole host of stuff going on in New York next week. We're going to be there. If you're there, please reach out. I thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you down the road.